in the Western world, there's a lot of nihilism when it comes to the environment, right? When it comes to climate change, it's like, oh, it's all gloom and doom. We got 10 years, and nothing is going to happen. Nothing good is going to happen. The Western world, right? It's all Western centric, Eurocentric, US centric. No one can save us. Well, there was an interesting op-ed written not too long ago this month, I believe it was not a week ago, that I want to share with you from a very unlikely source, the Sydney Morning Herald. So if you've been following anything about Australia, whether helping form AUKUS, the US, UK, Australia, a lot military alliance, whether you're following their increases in their military budget every single year, labeling China a threat, despite import and exports from China being so heavily, vitally important to Australia. It doesn't matter that China is their biggest trade partner by far, that China is Australia's biggest trade partner by far. Australian politics from Mr. Morrison and now to the new Labor government. I don't even know that guy's name, but it doesn't matter. It is a vassal of the United States, and it has been a leading force in this new Cold War, Australia, despite its relative irrelevance. Okay. But I want to share with you an article in the Sydney Morning Herald. This was written a little over a week ago on August 20th by this Nick O'Malley, their climate and environment editor. So the Sydney Morning Herald is no friend of China. The Sydney Morning Herald is really no friend of anybody. It's a corporate outlet. It speaks through the bourgeoisie in Australia and the West. And I want to share with you what this has to say because I think it's very interesting, okay? I think we if you're going to learn about this is a mainstream source, we have to publicize when mainstream sources are admitting to the fact that there is hope out there, and it's just not in the places that we're trained and conditioned to believe it's in. So here we go. This is what Mr. O'Malley had to say. Climate activists and scientists the world over, and here's the U.S. kind of groveling, breathed a deep sigh of relief this week when Joe Biden signed into law the Inflation Reduction Act as America's biggest ever package of climate actions had been rebranded while it was wrestled forcefully through the Senate. It's the law, said Biden on Tuesday. The bill is the biggest step forward on climate ever. Look at that photo. I can't with Joe Biden. That was going viral on the internet for all the wrong reasons. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. I got a half hour out before our guests come on, so I can't dilly dally. All right. So the scope of the package is extraordinary. Its various measures will channel 370 billion US dollars. Well, it says 500. Oh, that's Australian dollars. So 370 billion US dollars into programs that, if successful, will see the creation of 60 gigawatts of new renewable energy capacity per year, doubling the amount deployed last year. Amazing, right? But in focusing on the future plans of America, the world risks missing what's already going on in China, where a green revolution is sweeping the economy. In the world's popular imagination, China is built on coal. At the COP26 climate talks in Glasgow in November of last year, China, along with Australia and India, declined to sign a pledge to phase out coal use. In the wake of the pandemic, it stimulated its economy by ramping up coal production so much that climate observation satellites detected new plumes of methane emissions leaking from mines across Inner Mongolia. For years, China's reliance on coal has been used as a rhetorical device in the West for those in the West opposed to taking effective climate action. It was used as an excuse by Donald Trump when he abandoned the Paris Agreement in 2017. Quote, he said China was allowed to build hundreds of coal plants, so we can't build the plants, but they can according to this agreement. So again, China, it's all China's fault. It's all China's fault. We're not doing it. Now, this is where it gets good. But the coal haze has obscured a more crucial truth about China's energy expansion. If pending U.S. efforts on renewable energy are extraordinary, the revolution underway in China is truly staggering. Last year, the U.S. boasted it was to deploy 30 gigawatts of new renewables. In China, the figure could be as high as 180 gigawatts. That's why I laughed. I was like, really? Uh, um, Last year, China alone accounted for 46% of the world's total of new construction of renewable energy infrastructure. So last week, Bloomberg, so this was earlier in August, reported that China's renewable investments for the first half of 22 included large-scale solar totaling 41 billion US dollars, up 173% from the year before, more than 1.5 times larger. So they almost doubled. their solar capacity. And investment in new wind projects increased by 107% year on year to 58 billion US dollars. This is not a product of so of course it's the Australian media, so you have to be ready for the propaganda as well. So it's not all good according to it's not altruism, he says. Xi Jinping is doing it because he intends that China will dominate these critical industries of the future. As international energy analyst Tim Buckley put it, while China leads the world in coal use, it also leads the world in wind and solar installation and wind and solar manufacturing and electric vehicle production and batteries and hydro and nuclear and ground heat pumps and grid transmission and distribution and in green hydrogen. They literally lead the world in every zero emissions technology today. So it's not for altruism. It's just it's just to dominate the industries, right? But in order to build a renewable energy economy, in order to reduce climate catastrophe and carbon emissions, this is literally what is being promoted by the UN, by even all the Western countries. So when China does it, though, it's not altruism. They just want to dominate the markets. And then why the hell doesn't the US want to dominate the markets? Why doesn't Europe want to dominate the markets? Well, then we got to talk about how capitalism doesn't want to invest right now. They don't want to spend, the capitalists don't want to spend the capital, the constant capital necessary. They don't want to put the money down. They don't want to put the money down on the renewable energy. They don't, because it's very equipment and technologically intensive. That's one of the secrets that they don't tell you about capitalism right now, is that capitalism doesn't want that. Capitalism wants to continue on with what is the most intensive in terms of how to exploit for profit. So that's when they'll invest in new technology, is when it will lead to immediate profits. So she surprised the world with an announcement. Surprised the world, right, at the UN when it said it would stop funding offshore coal power stations, effectively knocking out 70% of the flow of global investment in the industry. So it is making a transition. It's making a real commitment. So China will step up its support for developing countries in developing green and low carbon energy and will not build new coal fire plants projects abroad, she said in a pre-recorded video. Since then, no new coal finance has flowed into China's Belt and Road Initiative. So that was last year. That was 2021. Underlying the pivot from fossil to green, the planet's energy battery manufacturer, CATL of China, this week announced it would build the world's largest new battery making plant in Hungary. An amazing 100 GWH, gigawatts, or I don't know, of annual battery capacity, costing 7 billion US dollars to supply Europe's booming electric vehicle market. The impetus behind China's green ambition is reasonably enough self-interest. So again, he's admitting that they're doing really great things, but it's all selfishness, right? It's all selfishness. It couldn't be any other reason. A senior fellow at the Lowy Institute, Richard McGregor, notes that like other countries, China has identified the pressing threat of climate change. So it's for self-interest, but they're also addressing the threat that most progressives and people who are not self-interested, they're interested in humanity, but it's self-interest when it comes to China, right? When climate change is an issue for China. So, you know, here you have them talking about the issues, right? China's rivers are struggling. There's the infernal heat of this summer up north in China, places like Chongqing. You have the retreat of glaciers, right? There are no climate deniers in China, says McGregor. You can tell this very easily because China's official media is not full of people denying climate change. The propaganda ministry doesn't allow voices which question science. So here you have a life-threatening, humanity-threatening problem. And these Western imperialist bootlickers want to tell you that China's censorship is the reason why you don't have any climate deniers in the media. Well, maybe it's the fact that the vast majority of people don't want to watch that. Whatever happened to choice, right? Whatever happened to, maybe the government wants to play things, wants to provide news that is conducive to what the people want to see, right? There's always this idea that it's, oh, China's government is dictating everything and their media is just sprinkling this propaganda on top of people's faces, and they're just like, it's just sinking into their pores and they're becoming these automatons, right, for the government. But what if the government also what if the media, China's state media, it's public media, what if it understands that people don't want to read climate denialism? I mean, China is a very active country. When they don't want something, they don't buy it. That's something you saw during these sanctions on Xinjiang. You had H&M boycotted. You had Chinese netizens and consumers saying, absolutely not. You boycott Xinjiang cotton, we're going to boycott H&M. I guess Chinese people have no agency, right? They just want to read climate deniers. I don't know. I mean, for a country that had a socialist revolution based on values like building toward communism, etc., it seems pretty reasonable that most people wouldn't want to read climate deniers. They're doing this because they want to dominate the investment, the employment, the technology, the leadership, and the opportunities that this entails for their economy. And they see all these industries as global growth sector. In China, climate policy is industrial policy. Ooh, that's bad. That's real bad. In the United States and the West, it's not. Climate policy is just absolutely nothing because there's very little of it. And this Inflation Reduction Act, while it was suckled on in the beginning of this, where this O'Malley was like, it's so great, bow down to our U.S. masters, didn't mention how a lot of that is due to a concession to Mr. Joe Manchin's drill baby drill industries, which are going to worsen the environment. I mean, absolutely ridiculous that it's talked about like this. But nonetheless, you still have an acknowledgement that China is serious about this. So anyway, this goes on to talk about, let's so it continues. So let's finish this up. Um, so a key message was a warning about basically last month, Biden's energy secretary Jennifer Granholm attended a conference in Sydney with Australia's energy minister Chris Bowen and the International Energy Agency's director Faith Birol. The conference was held in the shadow of whatever. So a key message in this conference was a warning about China's dominance, not only in deployment of renewable energy and its manufacture, but even the production of its base ingredients, such as polysilicon used to make photovoltaic solar cells, and the process of critical minerals and lithium. So again, don't collaborate with China. No, 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 no. Don't collaborate with China around climate. You must worry. You must compete. What ended up happening was sanctions, right? That's what's happened. Western leaders worry just as Europe allowed itself to be blackmailed by an energy giant and Putin, they might be setting themselves for the same problem with Xi in a decarbonized world. Far from fretting that China is stuck in the coal era, they fear it will dominate the renewable future. So instead of thinking about, well, maybe we should work with those guys over there in China. Maybe we should, I don't know, collaborate. Maybe we need to learn something. Maybe the tables have turned and now the technology transfer has to go the other direction. Maybe we can all do this. Maybe we can all profit from this. Maybe this is something that will actually help the stability of society. No, 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 no. We have to worry that China is going to outcompete us because how will our investors and our the private for profiteers and our capitalists and our oligarchs, how will they get the money that they deserve, right? How will they be able to turn this into a useless, profitable venture that will just worsen the situation? So again, you see here, 80% of the world's solar cells were produced in China, and that by 2025, it's going to be 95%. One province, that's Xinjiang, is responsible for 40% of global production, and two factories for about 20%. So it's like, oh, that's a dangerous thing, right? Well, then do it. That's my opinion. They're saying it's dangerous. The West, Australia, the United States saying it's dangerous. Then you do it. Why are you sanctioning? They're sanctioning right now the United States through the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, sanctioning China's solar industry instead of working together. It's so counterproductive. So anyway, I don't have to go on with this, right? It talks about how China and the United States cut off climate talks because of what the United States did with regard to Pelosi's Taiwan visit. Okay. And I want to show you some other things, right? But I think this is an interesting quote, right? A senior global policy advisor at Greenpeace China, Li Shuo, says a crucial contribution China has made is not just the billions of tons of greenhouse gases its deployment of green tech has avoided, but its success in driving down the cost of technology globally. It might make absolute geopolitical sense for the rest of the world to develop its own supply chains, but the fear is that it is not clear that it can achieve its decarbonization goals without China. I think the jury is very much out on this, he said. In fact, we're only at the very beginning of this decoupling, so I don't think we know the answer to this question, but the stakes are high and only time will tell. I mean, that's the thing. This is the thing with everything. The United States passed this Chips and Science Act. It's the same thing. It's going to cost $1 trillion to try to produce chips, semiconductor chips. It's going to cost $1 trillion to try to resource, right? Meaning bring it back, bring that production back here. That's why it doesn't ever happen, is because these corporations don't want to pay that kind of money, right? And so China has been able to, through, they say it's because of the monopoly, it's because of the public investment, it's because China keeps the cost of production low through that public investment. It's called subsidies. So the United States is weaponizing subsidies now with the Chips Act in order to try to get Samsung and other semiconductor, TMSC in Taiwan, to try to get them to move production or to transfer technology so companies can produce them here. Not only is that going to take years and years and years to build up for the United States, it's going to cost $1 trillion, according to CSIS, that the State Department think tank, which is known to warmonger. Even they acknowledge that. So this is the same deal here. To sanction China's industry and increase the cost of solar resources and parts like solar polysilicon in the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act is is increasing inflation and is going to elevate the cost of all renewables, which the United States is not willing to produce in a manner anywhere close. You heard 60 gigawatts, incredibly impressive. China in 1 year is doing 3 times that much, 6 times that much, right? Like that that's because of the way that China uses its public subsidies not as a weapon, but to keep prices low so it can expand production. The United States, though, relies on corporations and corporations only. And when subsidies come in, it's to bolster those private corporations. It's not to bolster social needs, human needs, planning, etc., around things like the environment. So it's really important to see this within this context, right? The Chips and Science Act and climate change, how the US is looking at climate change, how Biden is. It's all about waging this new Cold War. It's not about, well, high tech could be good for humanity. Well, the world's ecology being protected, conserved, and then healed is good for humanity. It's good for the people. It's good for the planet. No, it's about how can we undermine China and try to achieve this impossible, reckless, and outright dangerous goal of trying to weaken and then overthrow China's government, political system, and economic system. That is at the heart of all of this. And even the Sydney Morning Herald has to acknowledge, Bloomberg has to acknowledge, China is doing this. China is going forward with attempting to play its part in fighting climate change.